Homeless Bunny 22. Qian. We have time for one more, Glinda said, rolling the dice once more. On the monitor, the faces of those who'd already fought were crossed out. They couldn't be rolled but could be challenged on a voluntary basis. In that light, both mine and Amber's portraits were some of the few who had yet to be called. Carden Winchester, to the field. Carden swaggered onto the stage. He was a beefy, auburn-haired boy who stood a full head above the rest of his teammates. Clad in silver armor with a brass phoenix decor and swinging a mace like a conductor's baton, he looked like I wondered how strong he was. His teammates had all fought already. They weren't anything special, good or bad, but that wasn't reflective of their leader so early in the year. He looked at the monitor, then back at Glinda. I can challenge anyone. You may. They may decline if they've already fought. I may also reject the pairing if their aura level has fallen lower than I consider safe, Glinda said. Good. I challenge the bunny. The pinched expression on Glinda's face was absolutely hilarious. She knew. She was there when I spanked that amber-eyed maiden like an unruly child. She was there when I had that chat with Ozpin. As was RWBY. Though I'd agreed to Ozpin's request that I attend school, there wasn't any question in her mind as to the outcome of such a duel. And yet, she had no good reason to reject the challenge. Please be gentle, I heard her whisper, too quiet for anyone else to hear. As for the twins, they acted like their birthdays came early. We get to see someone else get Qianyu'd, Miltiades whispered excitedly. I know, right? Spoon. Spatula, her twin said back. Spoon. This shit's hilarious when it happens to someone else. Please don't turn my name into a verb, I sighed. Truthfully, I wanted to reject the challenge. It wasn't as though there was any worth in beating up children. Carden Winchester was a racist. He wasn't nearly as quiet with his mutterings as he'd like to think, certainly not quiet enough to go unnoticed by a divine rabbit. And yet, since when was I a champion of faunus rights? He had done me no harm, unlike Detective Powers. He did not label me a terrorist, nor did he waste my goodwill. Social justice, no matter what form, didn't overly interest me, not enough to reprimand him for some nasty words. Let others concern themselves with lofty ideals, my place was in the kitchen. I admit, I am curious to see you fight as well, Qianyu, Weiss whispered next to me. Even in the initiation, you and Amber didn't fight at all. Yeah. Can we not? I asked, holding up a gentle hand. I'd rather be in the kitchen if I'm honest. Carden scoffed. Yeah, that's where you belong. I couldn't agree more. A chef is the noblest profession of all. To cook is to nourish life. What greater cause is there than that? Yeah, right. Get up here, coward. You know, I'm going to give up right away, right? I said, putting a slight tremor in my voice that, to those who didn't know, might sound like nervousness. Still, I stood and made my way to the stage. Please take this seriously, Glider muttered. Or at least pretend to. I almost laughed at that. Serious? A Campione. That was the last thing she ought to be asking for. And yet, I was a merciful bunny. And I do so love to subvert expectations. I stood there, trembling slightly. My ears twitched back and forth in apparent agitation. Opposite me, Carden slung his mace over one shoulder, the picture of absolute confidence. With evident reluctance, Glinda started the match. Carden had some real muscle. The head of his mace swung for me like a comet, faster than most others in the room could manage, and with only one hand at that. I did not block. Nor did I let it strike my face and shatter. No, for the first time since my arrival, the twins saw me run. Wah! Save me! I cried desperately. I leapt back and barely dodged out of the way of the swing, only to turn tail and run to the edge of the arena. What? Get back here, coward! Carden roared as he leapt after me. No. You're going to hit me. No fucking shit. Wah. You're scary. I led him on a merry chase, only ever avoiding the edge of his mace by the width of a whisker each time. I made sure to stumble around without form or balance, like a drunkard with a sudden penchant for Irish dancing. Then, halfway through, I started to bawl. A stream of water converted directly from my manna flowed from my eyes as I ran around the stage. Boah! This is animal abuse. A case of bunny battery. Shut up and fight. No. This is resentment towards rabbits. Hare hate. Stop bullying me. Hold still. Carden cried out. His mace glowed with the crimson light of dust as he struck the floor. I dodged and tucked into a roll that looked as though I'd barely scraped by. Then, with zero shame whatsoever, I rolled onto Glinda's feet, grasping onto her thighs like the world's most overweight koala. Save me. I'm sorry, Glyn. I give up. I bawled, tears streaming like a fountain. The look on Glinda's face was one I'd cherish forever. There was nothing quite like so thoroughly destroying someone's expectations that their mind shut down altogether. She looked at me like some new species of animal, an alien creature so foreign that it defied all comprehension. Then reality struck. Along with Carden's mace. He'd turned his downward swing into a backhand in an attempt to finally nail me. So flustered was he that he was no longer aware of his surroundings. So bewildered was Glinda that she'd likewise lost track of Carden. And so, Carden's mace met Glinda's stomach with an impressive thud. Aura was a passive shield. And Glinda, being a woman who relied on it exclusively over a more conventional weapon, had a lot of it. It didn't hurt her, not truly, but she was sent flying off the stage in an undignified tumble nonetheless. Perhaps, had she not been encumbered by a bunny-shaped limpet hugging her thighs, she might have triggered her semblance in time to anchor herself. But she did not. And so, our duel came to an end, with Glinda as the sole, thoroughly annoyed casualty. The entire room fell silent as the air took on a distinct, violet hue. She looked at me, still sniffling with tears in my eyes. Then she looked at Carden, frozen in his final pose, reality sinking in. What do you have to say for yourselves? She growled. Her eyes shone a menacing violet. Her hair and half-cape fluttered in an invisible breeze. An ominous weight settled on our shoulders, making everyone freeze like a mouse that just now noticed the cobra in the room. I sniffled, dried my tears and then said, "Don't look at me, Glyn. I gave up. Carden's too strong for me. I'm the victim here. This is bunny battery. Animal abuse, I say. Out?" Seeing how she actually looked pissed enough to chuck me through the window, or at least make the attempt, I decided to make myself scarce. I ran out of the room, leaving Carden to deal with the professor's wrath. That was cruel, Qianyu, Amber chided. This was hopefully the tail end of a half-hour-long lecture on propriety, professionalism, how a team leader ought to conduct himself, and a bunch of other synonyms. In my defense, I began, only to be met with an arched brow. Yes? At least I didn't hurt him. That's not actually, yes, I suppose there's that. You lost us money, Bun, Melanie said with a pout. We were counting on you to beat him up. I nodded as I stirred the whisk through a bowl of egg whites. Tonight's dinner would be a simple meal of grilled salmon, rice, and asparagus with a baked Alaska for dessert, and I needed the meringue. Yeah, I heard. You shouldn't have made such a specific bet like Qianyu will beat him up with a spoon. You never know when I might decide to prove you wrong. You could hear us and still let us lose. Not cool, Miltia pouted, only to stick her tongue to the tip of her nose when I smeared a small bit of meringue on there. Very cool. It's hilarious. You have the worst sense of humor. And now you owe Nora 20 lien. Gambling is bad, girls. See, Amber? I can be a responsible team leader. Look at me teaching them valuable life lessons. Was there a point to your nonsense? Besides teaching the twins a lesson? Amber questioned. She had her homework in front of her, the only one of us doing her work diligently. Yep. Can you girls spread the word that if someone gives my bully a hard time, I might reward them with a free meal? You're kidding. You're right. Maybe just a cookie. Either way, defenders of bunnies deserve to be justly rewarded. You don't need defending. You're the last person on Remnant who needs defending. Details. Was that why you made tamales for the whole school? To motivate them to be more conscientious of fairness bullying? Ha ha ha, you're really giving me way too much credit, I said. I mean, if good food motivates students to crack down on bullying, great. But I just wanted to enlighten the masses to the wonders of our team's namesake. Right? I don't believe you, she mused with a ghost of a smile. I think you're a better person than you let on. Lies and slander. You took in a pair of twins and convinced them to turn from their criminal ways and fight for humanity as huntresses. They are convenient arm candy. You adopted Weiss Schnee because you thought she looked lonely. Teasing her is hilarious. You left a dozen all-cure potions with a stranger. Justly deserved. A farmer's labors are sorely undervalued. Miltia stared at me, then at a comic book she'd been thumbing. You're such a tsundere. I booped her nose with all the dignity of an affronted bunny. Hey, now. I know what that word means. You're so son it hurts. Hush, you. Okay, more seriously, I wanted Glinda to exempt me from combat class, for obvious reasons. I couldn't think of a way to do that without maiming some poor kids, so I went with that abject shitstorm. Well, congratulations, Amber drawled. Professor Goodwitch caught us after you ran off and told you to not come back. Great. All according to Keikaku and all that. You speak Australian. And that specific dialect at that, Militia asked, eyebrow raised. I speak a lot of languages. A century's a long time, and Campione have a natural affinity for languages of all types. You're such bullshit. I know, I preened. That was the absolute last time I entered combat class. We came to an unspoken agreement, Glinda and I. She didn't insist on my attendance, and I wouldn't make a fool of her class altogether, or worse. Honestly, it was something we probably should have talked about before Carden challenged me and put her in an awkward position. In the end, I apologized for that nonsense and smoothed things over, mostly, with a cake and the promise of a freshly brewed cup of tea whenever she needed to relax. Really, I did feel a little bad for making things difficult for her, and felt the best thing for us was for me to recuse myself from the class altogether. Which wasn't to say there was no fallout from my antics over the next several days, particularly with the student body. For starters, my team earned a reputation as the single most lopsided team in the school. The twins weren't considered the weakest, but they weren't far off. No, the weakest student was me, the leader, who ran away bawling from his first combat class and refused to attend any other. By contrast, Amber dominated. Goodwitch 2.0, they called her, to our amusement and Glinda's annoyance. Her semblance absolutely destroyed everyone, lifting them into the air, taking their weapons, and stealing the air from their lungs. Even the invincible girl wasn't immune to Amber's brand of maidenly bullshit. As it turned out, Pyrrha's semblance had something to do with magnetism. It, along with her excellent fundamentals, was how she'd remained undefeated, unscathed even, in most matches. But Amber didn't give two shits about metal. Her weapon was a wooden staff, so that was that. The funny part of all this was that my team, Glinda, and Ruby were all aware that Amber was holding back massively. She had an aerokinetic semblance after all, and felt no reason to use the giant crystal of fire dust at the tip of her staff. In a confined area, the tornado that ravaged the stage was oppressive enough. Which was how I found myself standing in the middle of the beacon courtyard, a rapier jabbing the tip of my nose. Weiss glowered at me fiercely, her crystal blue eyes like chips of ice. "Brother dearest," she began, "do you mind explaining why you have been absent from every combat class?" "Weiss, maybe Qianyu has a good reason," Ruby said, tugging at her sleeve. "Yes, dear sister. Listen to your team leader." "Has Glyn said anything about it?" I asked. "No, but that's not the point. You ran away bawling, Qianyu." Weiss cried. "You're a huntsman for brother's sake. And a Schnee." "I'm not a Schnee though." "You count." "But what does that have to do with Enith?" "Everything. No brother of mine is going to be such a coward. You're a huntsman. If you're at this school, you will learn to fight. And you're going to teach me." "Yes. If no one else will, then I must step up to the task." This was amusing to me at first, then I looked at her more closely. She was upset, that was a given, but there was more to this than some misplaced pride that I was besmirching her name or some such. It didn't take a genius to figure out why. A huntsman who couldn't fight was destined to die a messy death. As far as she was concerned, her brother who'd so recently appeared in her life wasn't taking his education seriously, education that might well save his life. She was afraid. For me. That sucked the fun out of my antics. I had three options. 1, I could ignore her completely. Blowing her off would probably ruin my relationship with her. It'd keep me from mentoring her and teaching her to loosen up a bit, though admittedly, Ruby had been doing a good job of that these past few days. 2, I could give in, go along with what she wanted and let her train me. It'd be funny, at least for a while, and give me an excuse to spend more time with her. But it'd also be a waste of time, and she'd know eventually. A Campione's power was impossible to hide forever, not unlike trying to bury a live grenade. There was no such thing as a secret Campione in history because we were kings. Just as fate tended to work itself out in our favor, it also tended to unveil us sooner or later, and usually in climactic, cataclysmic ways. And when she found out she'd been tutoring a person who was laughably better than her, I didn't think her pride would survive that. She'd wonder if I was always mocking her behind her back, giggling at the way she did her best for my sake. She'd wonder if I'd taken advantage of her like all the rest. I didn't want that for her. She didn't deserve me spitting on her goodwill, however poorly delivered. Or 3, I could skip it all. I wasn't hiding, not really. My goal here wasn't to become some secret agent, it was simply to kill time while the moon repaired itself. "You want to train me?" I asked Weiss again. "Yes. You could get hurt, Qianyu," she said, insistently but sincerely. "Fine, come along," I said, walking off. I waved Ruby away, and led Weiss towards the cliffs. "I have Amber. I'll admit your teammate is incredibly powerful, but she's not someone who can teach you anything, not unless you have a wind-based semblance as well." "Nope," I turned and motioned for her to walk with me. "I mean that I'm stronger than her. Stronger than Pyrrha. Or Ruby with her super death scythe. Or Yang with her gorilla strength." "Then why would you?" "Because I'm too strong. I should be teaching you all. And by you all, I'm including Glyn. Haven't you wondered why she hasn't made a fuss when I stopped showing up for class? You did go to her, right?" She brushed me off and said I should mind my own business. And your teammates? Did they say anything? Ruby said I should listen to Professor Goodwitch, Weiss huffed, and Young laughed at me. Because they know. They met me a month or two before school. Lots of things happened, but they both picked a fight. And lost. Where are we going, Qianyu? This is the forest. Are you going to show me that you can hunt Grim after all? Something like that. Now come on, Weiss. Once we got to the forest, I led her to a secluded clearing. Then, I turned and held out my hand, the golden seal of the Wuxing blooming to life in my palm. It was time to drop some bullshit. Enough shit to sculpt a monument to my glory. I heard that in the Schnee family, the greatest expression of your family semblance is the creation of constructs, right? I asked her rhetorically. The twins had been thorough in their briefing, especially regarding one Winter Schnee, one of Atlas' most decorated specialists. They are always in the shapes of past opponents, your greatest challenges. That's right. Qianyu, don't tell me even I haven't mastered summoning yet. I said your semblance, little sister. Mine is a bit different. I don't make constructs of my fallen enemies. If I did, a construct of Maxazak, the horned serpent of Lenape creation myth, would surely make the world collectively shit itself in terror. Wide enough to deep-throat a New York skyscraper. Long enough to stretch from horizon to horizon. I'd carved a saber out of his fang, a godslayer's weapon that I seldom required these days. No, mine instead allows me to anoint other creatures, making them bigger, smarter, stronger, and faster. Are you saying you can create minions? Yep. Want to see? I admit I'm curious. Then come meet my friends. And with that, I blew a sharp whistle. At first, the glade was silent. Then the biggest, fluffiest bunnies, each the size of the average sheepdog, bounded through the forest. There were 4 in total, 1 for each day of class I'd missed. Behind them came 12 little bunnies, all small enough to fit into my cupped hands. I had to do something while the rest of my team were in class after all. I'd cooked, because of course I did. But I'd also expanded the moonlit famiglia. After all, a capo, or capo regime, was a captain, a crew leader. What was a captain without his crew? And so, in true mafia fashion, I'd gone about making the soldato, the soldier. Under these 4 soldiers were 3 picciotti, little men, each. They were purposely denied size buffs, not just to suit the name of their rank, but so they could be the stealthy hands and feet of the moonlit famiglia. Instead of size, strength, and a unique power each soldato and capo received, they'd been blessed with invisibility and conceptual silence, the serenity of a moonless night. 16 bunnies stood before me in total. It was about the average size for a capo's crew. A true mafia was made up of many such crews, all answerable to an underboss, who then of course answered to the boss, or Don. Soldato Sufel salutes the capo di capi re, the first of the 4 shouted, thumping his paw over his breast in an obvious sign of fealty. Beneath his feet, his 3 picciotta mirrored their leader. Soldato Shortcake salutes the capo di capi re. Soldato Sorbet salutes the capo di capi re. Soldato Semifreddo salutes the capo di capi re. The others followed in perfect synchronicity. My authority, the power of the name, worked off impressions and assumptions I had about the mafia. I wasn't a mobster obviously, but I did watch The Sopranos, The Godfather, and other such flicks back in the day. The impression I had was that the higher up the ranks of the mob you were, the more relaxed you could afford to be. Capo Cuddles, as a captain, had a lax attitude because he knew what he was about. He was a man with self-confidence. He was a made man, one who needed no introductions in the moonlit famiglia. These soldati. They were made men too, but ones eager to prove themselves. They were soldiers and their king had summoned them. I nodded approvingly. They didn't need to behave this way, of course, but they were just so damn cute that I didn't have the heart to stop them. Qian Yu. Yes, Weiss? They are SOO Cutty. They are, aren't they? You made talking bunnies. I did. Everything else Weiss might have said was drowned out into mumbles, as she buried her face into Sorbet's fur. For his part, Sorbet took it like a champ, head held high with dignity as he endured my sister's affections. Cuddles crew. I barked. Sigh, Ree, they echoed as one. That is my little sister. She is to be treated as such. Sigh, Ree. You are not to let her leave this glade no matter what. Sigh, Ree. That got her attention. Wait, what? I looked at her smugly. You may not harm her in any way. However, until midnight, you may not allow her to take a single step out of this clearing. Afterwards, you will let her go and rejoin Capo Cuddles to continue your original directive. Are my orders clear? Sigh, Ree. La Principessa will not leave the clearing until midnight, they echoed. They were good boys and girls. Good? Have fun, Weiss. We have 8 hours until midnight. If you can escape them and find me in my dorm before then, I'll admit that you are worthy of training me. If not, you will give up on the idea. Deal? I didn't agree to this. Too bad. Toodles tilde. With that, I vanished in a flicker. Really, training a Campione. Yinghua would have coughed blood at the idea. Homeless Bunny 23. Weiss Schnee. My brother was the greatest. Not my little brother, Whitley was problematic. Well, kind of my little brother. Qian Yu was so little even though he was older than me. Little big brother. Yes, that sounded right. I wasn't usually prone to bouts of silliness, years of etiquette classes saw to that, but I couldn't help myself. I was in a cuddle puddle of bunnies. An entire fluffle of bunnies in fact. Although, hadn't Qian Yu said the Don of his moonlit famiglia was called Don Fluffles? He named his first bunny Don Bunnies. Really, that man's naming sense was ridiculous. But admittedly adorable. I pulled one of the 4 huge bunnies into my chest. I was pretty sure this was Semifredo. She was so darn soft, I couldn't resist burying my face in her fur. That's it, Principessa, just lie back and relax, she cooed. Rub my ears if you'd be so kind. Yeah, right there. Ooh tilde, that's the spot. She even called me princess. I didn't know how long I'd stayed like that. My world became a fog of fluffy cuddles and luxuriously soft fur. It was like a hypnotic trance of warm snuggles. But eventually, hunger woke me from my trance. What time is it? I asked, glancing down at my scroll. I stood up in a hurry. Oh, brothers. It's supper time. I need to go, you guys. A male bunny, Sorbet, I think, waved his paw and 4 of the little black ones dashed off into the shadows. Don't worry, that's what the Picciotti are for. His Majesty wouldn't let his darling sister go hungry now, would he? They'll bring back a nice heaping of the forest's bounties you can graze on until midnight. No, my team will be worried about me. He'll have it handled. I'm sorry, Principessa, you heard Illinois Ray's orders. I need to rejoin my team, I huffed. You can't stop me with cuddles. The 4 bunnies, all about as large as small sheepdogs, looked at one another. Semifredo said somberly, we cannot let you leave. We apologize. I began to march off, only for Soldato Sufel to hop in front of me. He was the easiest to recognize, thanks to a single lop ear. We cannot disobey Illinois Ree, not even to our dying breath. Our honor demands it as proud members of the moonlit famiglia. Realization dawned on me. I can't believe this. Qianyu wants me to kill poor bunnies to prove a point. That won't be happening, Semifredo said soothingly. Sufal is right, we'd die for His Majesty, but Principessa, you can't kill us. I have a sword. And we are bunnies anointed by His Majesty, the Jade Rabbit, he who reigns from the Lunar Palace, the seventh Campione. We will not fall to a single huntress. Please don't make me hurt you, I begged. Sufal sighed and stood on his haunches, coming up to around my upper thighs now. He then got into the strangest kung fu stance I'd ever seen. Leave it, Semifredo. She has aura. Semifredo nodded and backed off. Yeah, I guess this was bound to happen. RWBY wanted to show her that he was powerful without having to hurt her himself, so we should show her that she cannot even defeat the likes of us soldati. Obviously. Principessa, I'm sorry. This will be a harsh lesson. I wasn't an expert in hand-to-hand combat like Yang, but that didn't mean I was about to draw Murtanasta against a bunny. I got into my best estimation of a boxer's stance. Yes, I suppose it will be pain. Everything was pain. I was laid out on the forest floor, staring up at the stars. My combat skirt had long been ruined with smudges of mud and grass. I couldn't even bring myself to be upset over that. The dress could be replaced, but I'd yet to determine if my shattered pride would ever recover. I didn't just lose, I got trashed. Sufal apparently had a semblance. I'd gone in expecting aura, how else would the little rascal talk, but that wasn't all. His fur had grown thickly, creating a fluffy armor that somehow felt delightful to touch yet was impossible to penetrate. Twin boxing gloves made of fluff covered his forepaws. After a while, to my eternal shame, I became frustrated enough to draw my sword. And then I started using my semblance. And then I tapped into my dust reserves. And still lost. Murtanasta's blade failed me. It could not pierce the dense fluff. What little I managed to cut merely tangled my blade until it was wrenched from my hand. Sufal hit hard. He wasn't as strong as Yang, but I suspected that was because he didn't have her mass. He was for sure faster though, fast enough to maybe compete with RWBY. Put those together, and he made for a deceptively dangerous opponent. All told, I thought he'd give some teachers a run for their money. This isn't fair, I panted. How are you this strong? I'm not strong, Principessa, he said. He shrugged his little shoulders and the fluff that covered his paws like boxing gloves fell away. Capo Cuddles is much stronger than me. I've never met her, but Don Fluffles must be a giant in comparison. It is said she can slay divine beasts with a flick of her whiskers. And Qianyu? Look up, he pointed. See the moon? Good. Now grab it. I fell silent at that answer. My brother commanded so much respect and loyalty. Maybe it was because he was the one who elevated them, but I didn't think that was all. It wasn't just them after all. His teammates, and RWBY and Yang, they all treated him like he was someone special. Amber was strong, so strong that it baffled me how someone like her could have gone unnoticed for so long. She made Pyrrha look like a complete rookie. I would have thought someone like that would challenge such a wishy-washy team leader, resent being under him like I had with RWBY at first, but she didn't. Instead, she deferred to him at every turn. Even Professor Goodwitch, as clearly infuriated with him as she was, still treated him differently. She acted like he wasn't someone she could discipline, like he was her equal and not a student. Clearly, my worries were unfounded. I have a long way to go, huh? I laughed bitterly. You do, but we all start somewhere. RWBY said you left your home to find yourself, Sorbet said kindly. I think you're in the right place, Principessa. He's not my real brother, is he? What makes you say that? This, I said, waving my hands at all of them. He's too much. His semblance has some superficial similarities with mine, but he's too strong. Too perfect. Does it matter? He adopted you anyway. Do you think he'd call us from our task for just anyone? No, I suppose not. Say, what is your directive? It's not like you just spend your days in the forest. Or do you? Did he make you to keep the Emerald Forest safe for travelers? Not quite. Then what do you do? He tapped his feet nervously. Ah, that's... Oh, look at that, Semifredo cut in. It's midnight. Our task is complete. Give Illinois our regards, Principessa. The four of them, along with the palm-sized black bunnies that seemed to fade into the shadows, vanished. Really, I supposed an adopted brother was fine. But what could he be doing with an army of huntsman-level bunnies? Chen Yu. You? I heard as Weiss stomped up to me the next morning. Yes, my darling little sister. I asked, sweet as honey. How was the cuddle puddle? You ag. I believe my point has been made. It has, she said grudgingly. I slid over a cup of coffee and cut her a big slice of quiche. It was feta and spinach, simple, tasty, and not too heavy. I'd made extra just for her after all. Good. Have some breakfast. She took a seat with a huff and cut out a forkful of quiche into her mouth. She hummed in appreciation. You can't bribe me with food, you know. Of course not, I said with a smile, ignoring the way her actions betrayed her. Wouldn't dream of it. I couldn't even do my homework last night because of you. MMHM. A tragedy, to be sure. Exactly. Why you need to make it up to me. Of course. Care for a second slice? Yes, please, she said politely, dabbing at the corner of her mouth with a handkerchief. Then, but don't think this is enough. I wouldn't dare. What can I do to make it up to my darling little sister? I said with a chuckle. That's right. You're my big brother. And as my big brother, you have responsibilities. Responsibilities I have not met, I assume. Right. You have to train me. It shouldn't be too hard to teach you summoning, I mused. And if not, I can still teach you how to use a sword. Admittedly, a rapier and saber are two different things, but they are similar enough to qualify. Really? Yes. Just like that. I don't see why not. I mean, it's not like I actually do any schoolwork here. And what's with that? She asked, jabbing her fork at me in a distinctly unladylike manner. The professors let you get away with way too much. I'm fluffy. I've charmed them all with the wonders of my fluffy ears. And food. Food is life, after all. You're ridiculous. Yep. The twins looked at each other with barely hidden amusement. She has no idea what she signed up for, does she, Mel? No, she does not. This should be fun. Capo Cuddles. I looked over my crew, the Cuddles crew. This was it, the very first of the moonlit famiglia in Remnant. We were the first, and with that privilege came the burden of establishing ourselves in the name of His Majesty, the Jade Rabbit. My soldati looked up at me expectantly. Semifredo, Shortcake, Souffle, and Sorbet were fine hares all, blessed with strong minds and bodies. They would go out and conquer the underworld in the name of our king. The Picciotto were small and weak, but swift and silent, melding into shadows. They would be our eyes and ears. Soon, the moonlit famiglia would reign over Vale from the shadows. But first, there was the issue of detective powers. That filthy copper dared insult His Majesty. Retribution must be delivered. That was what we were gathered to discuss. You all know the mission. I asked them. Of course, Capo. We make that fucker regret being born, Shortcake. A doe with light, tan fur, said with a bloodthirsty grin. Illinois gave her the power to make swords out of her own fur, and mayhaps a tad too much of the killing instinct. Lemmy at him. Fucker won't be calling anyone no stinking terrorist. We can't do that, Sorbet, her brother and the sniper of my squad, said quietly. You know Illinois Ray's orders. We need this to be quiet. You just want your shot at him. No, we can't end him. Illinois said he should be miserable. Our job is to make his life as inconvenient as possible. That's right, I said. He explicitly told us that the detective ain't to come to harm. No broken kneecaps, no falling down the stairs, no cement boots. No nothing. Well, what's the fun in that? Shortcake huffed. It ain't fun. This is a mission, a stealth mission. Hold on, Sorbet cut in. That's all well and good, but are you sure Illinois wants this to be a stealth mission? That's what I heard. Why are saying my hearing's going bad? No, Capo, what I mean is, we are not going to remain quiet forever, right? The moonlit famiglia is going to take over the underworld. We are. How are we going to do that if no one knows we exist? That did seem contradictory. The five of us fell silent in thought. Illinois had plans, he had to. Which meant we were the ones who hadn't thought things through yet. I don't think he means for us to be quiet forever, Semifredo said. I think His Majesty just wants us to keep things subtle, make sure we are not taken too seriously by the cops or the government. It should be fine to make a name for ourselves underground. What makes you say that, sis? Sufil, who'd been silent until now, asked. He wasn't lazy per se, but he was the one who wanted to finish the job as soon as possible so he could get back to lounging around. He revealed us to the Principessa, and that Amber girls met the Capo. Yeah, I remember her. She's strong, for a human, but also kinda soft. She ain't ready for the tough life, so it's a good thing Illinois Ray's keeping an eye on her, I nodded. Now that she mentioned it, the picture was starting to paint itself. Say, the other two broads on his team, ain't they some kinda mob too? That's what I heard from the Picciotto, Capo. So the bossman's already been making inroads with the locals. That means it should be fine to approach their don. Sounds good, Sorbet said. That should give us resources and manpower. So what do we do with the detective? All right, I've decided. We'll split up. Sorbet and I will talk to this junior fella. Get a read on him, and make sure he knows where his loyalties lie now. What about us? Shortcake asked with a frown. Don't tell me we are going to be sitting around digging up clovers while you two have all the fun. Nah, it ain't like that, Shortcake. You and Sufil look into the other gangs. There's gotta be a few smaller ones out there. Beat M up and take M down. Let M know there's a new king in town. Got it. We can consolidate, Sufil said with a nod. And me? Semifredo raised a paw in question. You've got the best ears out of all of us, I told her. You're gonna lead the Picciotti. Take your group and bug the shit out of Powers. Get creative. I'll leave it to you. Capo. I can do that, she said with an earnest nod. We'll stick with the classics for now. Good. We, the Cuddles crew, are the first of the moonlit famiglia on Remnant. We will not disappoint His Majesty. Capo, my crew cried out as one. They did an old bunny proud. Hey Junior Jean. Life was not good, but decent enough. It had been a week since the twins left with Qianyu, and the worst I'd had to deal with were some customers complaining that the food wasn't as good as it used to be. Lenny and the boys tried their best, but they hadn't quite mastered the bunny's recipes. Even considering that, the club brought in more money than ever before. That said, not all was peaceful. There were stirrings in the background. Someone had let slip that the twins, my top enforcers, were off in Beacon, turning over a new leaf. They weren't, Chen sure as shit wasn't some angel, but the rumor gave other, lesser gangs ideas. I'd probably have to go smack them around a bit, maybe get the twins back for a weekend. Then there was whatever the hell Roman and Neo were up to. Roman surrendered to Glinda Goodwitch over a dust robbery, allegedly, but I had it on good authority that a Snow White bunny was involved. The crook didn't stay in jail, of course, not even for a full 24 hours, before Neo broke him out. They'd been keeping their heads down, but I doubted that would last. I knew those two too well to think otherwise. Lastly, there was talk about the White Fang beginning to move. Oh, I wasn't stupid. I realized pretty damn quickly that Chen Yu was the one who met the farmer. There was no one else insane enough to solicit a farmer for corn husks at 1 in the fucking morning. But that didn't mean anyone else knew what was going on. From what I could gather, the White Fang thought there was some kind of super-faunus secret agent. His hypothetical mission ranged from destabilizing the police force, taking hostage the local food supplies, to peddling some new drug. All of that would be hilarious if I thought people were smart enough to not act on baseless rumors. Unfortunately, I'd been in the gig long enough to never underestimate human idiocy. Depending on how the VPD and the Fang reacted, things could get messy as rumors snowballed out of control. Which was bad for business. In a time when the twins were stuck in school of all things. Oh, I could call them back, but they would bring the bunny with them, and that was like throwing a grenade down a rabbit hole. I had no doubt he could solve whatever needed solving, but the question was, what other steaming shit heap would he leave me with when he was finished? I knew from living with him for over a month, Chen Yu did not think like normal people. He functioned off some weird sense of reciprocity mixed with condescension, as if he was the only adult in the room and everyone, from Blondie to the twins, were children he needed to scold and guide along the right path. That, and whatever fucked up mentality that made him decide that being a chef was the greatest profession of all. He also seemingly had zero sense of scale. A destroyed club could be forgiven with an apology to the chef, not the dozens of other boys that Blondie actually beat up. A broken weapon would be repaid with another made using some kind of super metal no one's ever heard of. And if the farmer was right, corn husks were paid off using magic drugs that could fix anything. I really wanted to test that last one, but Osborne had taken them out of my reach long before I'd heard the full story. Any attempt to acquire a bottle for myself would be far too messy for my liking. All told, proportional response had a very different meaning to the fucking bunny than to us normal folk. I didn't even want to know what he'd do if the twins convinced him to take out the gangs. Which was why I slammed my head back down on the pillow in exasperation. I was about to go to sleep. Considering the things set in motion, this might well be my last night of uninterrupted sleep for weeks. Chen Yu sent you? I asked, groaning up at the figure. Rhetorical question, there weren't many people who'd break into my room like this. The ones who could were much more likely to leave a bomb, not a pair of oversized rabbits. Illinois re-sent me. Capo cuddles of the moonlit famiglia. Nice to meet CHA, Junior, the bigger one, pitch black with a shock of white fur over his chest in the shape of a four-pointed star, grunted out. He had a distinct accent I couldn't quite place, but I felt he needed a cigar to finish his look. This here's Sorbet, a soldato in my crew. We need to talk. Brothers, I better not be dreaming. Why ain't Drea mean? Get up. You say that, but rabbits don't talk. We do. Get used to it, bub. They stared at me intently. I didn't know what it was that made me get up, but get up I did. Maybe I didn't feel comfortable with the little shit staring at me in bed. I tried to ignore the distinct shiver of danger that crawled down my spine. He looked like any other rabbit, just freakishly large, but I couldn't dismiss my instincts. They were screaming that this little fuzzball was dangerous. I poured myself a glass of whiskey. Then, wondering why the hell not, I poured a second and third tumbler before sliding them over. You drink. Hey, good man, Capo Cuddles said. He, somehow, picked up his glass and swirled it around like a fucking expert before taking a sip. No, he didn't have opposable thumbs. Yes, he picked it up anyway. Next to him, the one called Sorbet did the same, but took noticeably smaller sips, like a watchful guard should. It's got a nice smell to it. You've got the good stuff, huh? Only the best, I replied. It was surreal. How the hell did they do that without thumbs? Still, I quashed my reservations and engaged the two in small talk. Capo Cuddles was an easygoing fellow, the kind of man who knew what he was about. Meanwhile, Soldato Sorbet was much more serious and kept his words brief. They made a good pair. If I closed my eyes, I could imagine I was sharing a drink with two veteran mobsters. I suppressed a sigh as I realized that I would forever be forced to associate the name Capo Cuddles with serious gang negotiations from this point forward. Qianyu was fucking with me. He had to be. So, what's this about? I asked neutrally. You joining the Famiglia. Well, let's say we are to be associates. Qianyu started his own gang and wants me to join. Hey, that's right. We'll be taking over the underworld eventually. For now, we'll keep things nice and quiet like. There's some stinkin' pig we gotta deal with first. Who detective powers? Good, the Famiglia could use smart associates. Did Qianyu send a hit squad of talking bunnies to offer detective? I asked, only partially in disbelief. Given all the other shit I'd seen him do, this wasn't as much of a surprise as it should have been. Capo Cuddles grunted, waving his paw back and forth. Illinois don't move like that. He said he wants this quiet like, and that means we can't off the bastard. We are to make his life real inconvenient. I've got my best gal and the Picciotti on the job. The what never mind, I don't need to know. So you want me to feed you and your Famiglia information while you lot keep to the shadows? That's right. Some of my boys are out on the town. Let's say they are doing a little fall cleaning, eh? They are off sifting through the dirt, picking up all the good carrots. As for the rest, well, they ain't nearly as polite as me and Sorbet here. Why hear me? I heard what he wasn't saying. My group got a pass because I was useful, probably because the twins got in good with their don. The moonlit Famiglia was consolidating power. Cuddles, and holy shit was that word starting to sound ominous, had sent his buddies out to beat up the other gangs, maybe picking up a few of the more useful guys while they were at it to increase manpower. Those were probably the carrots he was talking about. I almost pitied the poor bastards. At least I had a frame of reference for Qianyu's bullshit. Getting my ass handed to me by a hit squad of literal rabbits would probably have made me kill myself from the sheer indignity of it all otherwise. And, surprisingly, I believed Cuddles. I believed he could kick my ass, never mind that I had a good 10 times his weight on him. There was an aura of danger about him, an air of competence and self-assuredness I'd only seen in the most veteran of huntsmen. It was the confidence of a man who knew he could murder everyone in the building if he needed to. Capo Cuddles was a rabbit that walked like a lion. Still, I wasn't about to be intimidated by literal rabbits. Not even rabbit faunus, or whatever Qianyu was, literal rabbits. Qianyu scared the shit out of me, but I wasn't that far gone yet. You realize I'm gonna need more from you than just promises, I said sternly. You're free to buy information like everyone else, Capo Cuddles, but I run a business here. Fine, let's start with something nice and easy, Powers. Everything you know about him. I want a list of his family and friends. I want to know where he lives, what he likes to eat, how much he makes, the whole shebang. I can do that. Powers isn't important enough to keep tabs on, but I can have someone get into the records. It'll cost you though. Go on. See, there's a group called the Scorpions down by the docks. They mostly smuggle drugs in and out of the ports. You want us to off-M? Shortcake and Souffle should make their rounds eventually. I can move them up the list. Then you and yours can take over that territory. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Qianyu wasn't just fucking with me. His entire famiglia was named after dessert apparently. Except Cuddles, for whatever reason. No, I don't want control of the docks. I already know what goes in and out of Vale, and that's good enough for me, I told him. I just want you to destroy their newest drug sample. They are too addictive and RWBY, the leader of the Scorpions, isn't thinking about the long-term profits. I hear YA. Too much destroys lives and the customers can't spend money they don't have, so you want the drugs kept under control. That's right. Take out the drugs and I'll have an information packet ready for you. Capo Cuddles leaned back, stroking the four-pointed star on his breast like a beard. All right, we have a deal, Junior. Consider it done. Then, the two vanished in a blow of speed, almost as if they'd never been there at all. I felt like I was dreaming, but the 2 tumblers of whiskey were proof. Qianyu was fucking insane.